Episode number 52. There seemed no point in waiting for the Italian any longer, but outside it was certainly raining heavily, and as it was not so cold in the cathedral as Kay had expected, he decided to stay there for the time being. Close by him was the great pulpit. There were two plain golden crosses attached to its little round roof, which were lying almost flat, and whose tips crossed over each other. The outside of the pulpit's balustrade was covered in green foliage, which continued down to the column supporting it. Little angels could be seen among the leaves, some of them lively, and some of them still. Kay walked up to the pulpit and examined it from all sides. Its stonework had been sculpted with great care. It seemed as if the foliage had trapped a deep darkness between and behind its leaves, and held it there prisoner. Kay lay his hand in one of these gaps, and cautiously felt the stone. Until then he had been totally unaware of this pulpit's existence. Then Kay happened to notice one of the church staff standing behind the next row of pews. He wore a loose, creased, black cassock. He held a snuff box in his left hand, and he was watching Kay. Now what does he want? Thought Kay. Do I seem suspicious to him? Does he want a tip? But when the man in the cassock saw that Kay had noticed him, he raised his right hand, a pinch of snuff still held between two fingers, and pointed in some vague direction. It was almost impossible to understand what this behavior meant. Kay waited a while longer, but the man in the cassock did not stop gesturing with his hand, and even augmented it by nodding his head. Now what does he want? Asked Kay quietly. He did not dare call out loud here. But then he drew out his purse, and pushed his way through the nearest pews to reach the man. He, however, immediately gestured to turn down the sofa, shrugged his shoulders, and limped away. As a child Kay had imitated riding on a horse with the same sort of movement as this limp. This old man is like a child, thought Kay. He doesn't have the sense for anything more than serving in a church. Look at the way he stops when I stop, and how he waits to see whether I'll continue. With a smile, Kay followed the old man all the way up the side nave, and almost as far as the main altar. All this time the old man continued to point at something, but Kay deliberately avoided looking round. He was only pointing in order to make it harder for Kay to follow him. Eventually, Kay did stop following. He did not want to worry the old man too much, and he also did not want to frighten him away completely in case the Italian turned up after all. When he entered the central nave to go back to where he had left the album, he noticed a small second pulpit on a column almost next to the stalls by the altar, where the choir sat. It was very simple, made of plain white stone, and so small that from a distance it looked like an empty niche, where the statue of a saint ought to have been. It certainly would have been impossible for the priest to take a full step back from the balustrade, and, although there was no decoration on it, the top of the pulpit curved in exceptionally low so that a man of average height would not be able to stand upright, and would have to remain bent forward over the balustrade. In all, it looked as if it had been intended to make the priest suffer. It was impossible to understand why this pulpit would be needed, as there were also the other ones available which were large, and so artistically decorated.